Welcome to another Landscaping to the Point episode with me and JC. We are here. It is a Tuesday night. We are live, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. But if you are hungry, JC is eating right now for everybody. So hopefully you're just like, hey, this guy's eating, so why is he on here? But he's eating good food today. So
we keep it real here on the podcast. This is real life living, and I
That's
am
right.
unapologetically eating a nice steak dinner. So I'm going to do it on the podcast right here.
That's right. Why not? Right? Why not? So today we are on here, and we lost Josh. I don't know where Josh disappeared to, but he turned into the ghost of the AI system. So just so if you guys want to know, he is the ghost of the AI. So, you never know where he's at some of the times. So, but we're here and we are real. And this show is a real show. This is not an AI driven show, guys.
Nope.
So let's get going with the show. As everybody eats, everybody does things. So, we're just going to go with it today because, let's be out here. Let's do this. So welcome everybody to the show. Today's episode is considered breakdowns. So we're going to talk about breakdowns, what you can do. Sometimes you just got to live with it and just deal with it day to day. Sometimes you can't do nothing about it sometimes. But recently we had a couple breakdowns last week. And it's stuff that you can't deal with. You got to deal with it sometimes. One of our things that happened was our brand new mower, a tensioner spring popped on it and popped the belt underneath, and it wasn't, literally it's under warranty. It's only an hour and a half on it when it happened, but it was already a recall for it. So luckily, we got it to the shop and they were like, yeah, just got a recall on it. So luckily you can get it all taken care of right away. So they literally had a new belt and part on it within a couple days. So that was a good thing on that. But sometimes they don't even know about these things till the last minute when, the manufacturers are like, okay, we're getting a lot of calls about these. Let's make it a recall and fix it, quickly for everybody that has these mowers instead of sitting around and waiting around. So that was an easy breakdown that, only took a couple days. And then we had a tire blowout, which luckily we had a backup tire and got that on right away. But that's something I think when you're out in the field, you don't really think about is like a tire going or, a trailer tire popping. You really, some people don't even have spare trailer tires. Our mowing trailer doesn't have a spare tire on it, but we have spares back at the shop. It's one of the things that we don't think about carrying with us because it's in the way half the time. So you don't really think about saying, okay, I better take this spare tire with us today. But, I think one of the things you should always carry with you, and it's something that we always carry with us, is a jack, a 4-way, and, something to be able to, a block or something to put it up on there in case we have to block it out for, a little bit. So that way we can get the tire off and get it changed. So I think you always should have that kind of stuff. Make sure that you're easy. You got a 4-way comes in handy a lot, guys. I'll tell you what, a 4-way will definitely pop those, bolts off anytime compared to, the way it is. So definitely should have that and make sure that you are always prepared for that, because I think one of the things that we don't always think about is that, we go out, we mow all day long. We're not thinking about tires blowing. We're not thinking about what's going to happen next. We're just saying, okay, we're going to go out there. We're going to just get out there and do it and not even think about it. So we just go out there and do our normal day-to-day work and just go for it, so I think that's something that everybody has to prepare for. And then the last thing is we just had a spring on one of our mowers that's 3 years old. The spring that goes to the drive belt broke. And it's not a common part that breaks down. So our dealer didn't have it in stock. We call Pro Parts Direct, which, they can get it to us in a couple days, but our dealer was like, we'll get it to you. You buy a lot from us. You do a lot of business with us, so we'll get it to you and get it on as soon as possible, which we just got that back today. But that was something that, by having that problem break for us, that now put the warrant into the dealer to have that part in stock, to where they know that we're going to use that part if it breaks again down the road. So they know, hey, let's keep that part in stock for the next couple of years just to be on the safe side, because and it might break again, and then what are you going to do? A lot of things we try to keep in stock, like, we have an extra spindle in stock, which is not a common either. A spindle is not something that's common to break down, but we've seen them break down before in the past. And so we like to keep a spindle in stock, keep some bolts in stock. If you got some bolts, always keep belts. I mean, belts are one of the things that I think everybody goes through a lot, and you don't really think about it, but having a backup belt for your blades, for your drive belt, have those things in stock, so that way you can be, if something happens, you can be like, okay, I got that at the shop, or I got it in my truck. Keep it in your truck box and be able to change it right then and there on a job site. Because I'll tell you what, these mowers are not light to push off off a yard. They are not. When we had the spring breakdown it was on a riding mower, and that thing's about 900 pounds. So luckily we towed it with one of the other mowers all the way to the truck, and then pushed it right up onto the trailer with the other mower. And that's a good thing to have, is to have a tow strap to be able to move that mower when you can. Because when you're out in the middle of a yard and you're like, okay, I got to get this job done. I'll get it done with the other mower, but how am I going to get it out of here? How am I going to get it to the dealership, or how am I going to get it back to my shop to fix it? Got to have some way of getting it there. So always have a tow strap with you at all times too. So I think that's one of the things you can do to help prevent breakdowns. But a lot of times like I said earlier, there's some parts that you can't always keep in stock unless you're like, okay, I'll just buy an extra used mower and keep every part off of it and say, okay, then I have that. But why spend the money if you don't need to? So make sure that your dealer has parts for you, or they can get to the parts as fast as they can. I know a couple years ago that we were having problems, especially around COVID, where it was hard to get parts. So, it took 6 months to get some of these parts. So, I think a lot of these dealers now are always trying to stock up on these parts that break down on a common, of all their companies that they deal with. So that way they can keep them in stock. And I think that's a good thing, that if you got a good dealer, they'll try to keep parts in there for you, especially, so that way they know that you're going to come there and buy from you, instead of just looking all over the place, and if you can't, go to Pro Parts Direct, guys. They are one of our sponsors, but they also carry a lot of parts in stock for a lot of different mowers, and usually can get them out to you in a couple days. So that's always good if you're working on your own pieces of equipment. I think that's one of the things that you need to know, is how to work on some of your things like that. I've always taught my guys how to change the belts and stuff, because that's a common thing that's going to always happen on a lot of times, is you're going to blow a belt, or a belt's going to pop off, and you don't want to be stuck out in the middle of a job site without a belt. So learn how to change those. I mean, not everybody changes everything, and I understand that. I mean, I've been in business 30 years, and I've learned things little by little, and that's why I stay with the brands that I stay with, is because then I know what I need to do to fix something on that piece of equipment, compared to switching brands left and right, so but also have a good dealer that you can work with. I think that's one of the main important things you need when it comes to breakdowns.
Yeah.
JC, you got anything to add? I know you're still over there eating that steak, enjoying that steak, and
I moved on to I'm already done. I'm on the watermelon now, which is
yeah.
I love watermelon.
He's on to dessert. All right. Watermelon's good. I'll tell you that much. It is really good.
Especially in the summer, man. It's the best.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But
definitely in the summer.
Yeah, man, definitely. I'll give you an example. So recently I had an issue with the spring of my lift spring on my deck.
Okay.
and I was mowing my lawn, and I don't know if it was due to the vibration, but the thing snapped on me mid mowing. So I looked online. I ended up buying a part from eBay because it was much cheaper.
Right.
And it came in the mail. I put it back on. Everything seemed fine. I go out to mow again. The thing snaps again. And I'm like, wait a minute, something's going on. I don't think it's the spring. I think it's something else. But I realized that the part that I bought, I thought it was an original manufactured part. It was
Right.
actually an aftermarket part made in China. So when it comes to like breakdowns and stuff like that, make sure that you are buying quality parts. That's why buying from a dealership is actually pretty good. You get what you pay for.
Right.
Um, you
Right.
know what I mean? But the other thing too, to your point about the belts, I try to buy at least two of everything, so that I have always something on hand in case something does happen. It's not fun to have a drive belt break on you, like you said, in the middle of
No.
a mowing field. But also too, like, how about let's not react when something happens? How about we inspect our equipment before it actually breaks? And that's a lot of the issues is that people, they don't inspect their belts before going out on the job site, because it worked last week. You're going to think it's going to work again this week. We all know belts stretch real fast, wear and tear, spindles, all those things. And it might be on the verge of breaking. Maybe you could replace it before it ever becomes an issue. And, so you could prevent that because time is money. We all know that time is
Oh yeah.
money. The more time you spend on repairs out on the field, the less, you're going to be making because you're not going to be able to get to your customers. But yeah, having good relations with your dealers is always important. And just having stuff on hand. I mean, I I kind of asked this question to you as a seasoned landscape business owner and hardscape and stuff. Starting off as maybe a single operator in this business, we all worry about getting that first lawnmower and getting that big commercial lawnmower. People start with push mowers, which is fine. But should a new business owner, single operator, once they get their first mower, should they start working towards maybe having a backup mower
Yeah.
before they start thinking about more profits?
Yeah. I think having a backup mower is always good. Now that we bought the new mower this year, we have a backup. And I that's one of the things that really, I used to be very dominant about having is a backup mower, because you never know when something's going to happen to where you're like, I need a mower, you know, and there's a couple places by us that rent mowers, and you can find some places that do, but they're very little to find that mower, or if you're going to get one of those mowers, you might end up with. I know the one place only sells sit down, so they're like 60 inches and 72-inch sit down. So you might be stuck with getting, if you're running all 48s and that mower breaks down and you're like, oh, I got to go get a rider, rent a rider, then you're renting something that's bigger than what you need. But then again, you might not have the trailer to haul it. You might not have you might have gates. So how are you going to get into those
Mm,
gates? So you should always have, if you start out with, say, you start out by yourself with a 20-inch, keep a 20-inch in stock.
mm,
Always keep a 20-inch. We have two 20-inches. I'll tell you what, there's many times where one of our 48s broke down or a 36 broke down, and you're like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to mow with the 20-inch. I'm going to mow these yards. It might take me a little bit longer than the normal to mow, but I'm going to mow with, the 20-inch as long as I can. And hey, it's getting done. So even, you move up to that, big ride on, and you're like, okay, I got me a good zero turn. I'm going to mow with the zero turn.
mm.
Keep the 20-inch, keep the 20-inch. Then,
Yeah.
work your way to, and maybe a 48-inch just to be on the backside, or a 36-inch for the gates, keep that around there. So that way you always have that mower. It's always one of those good things to have as a backup mower, because like I said, it breaks down. What are you going to do at that point?
Yeah, I
You
think
still
it's
got to mow.
essential to have one. it's definitely essential to have them because I mean, if you're starting off and you're trying to get clients, and you got to a point where you were able to get a pretty decent mower,
Right.
and now you've you've got more clients, right? So your business is growing,
Right.
and you started off with a push mower and a couple accounts. Now that mower breaks, you still have to keep up with the amount of clients that you've gained, and you're not going to be able to do that with a push mower. I mean, maybe you'll be able to do a couple of them, but a lot of your clients are going to be waiting on you to mow, for you to mow their property because you're a single man, a single operator, I should say. Your mower's broken. Now you have to resort to your push mower. Now you have customers getting upset, especially you being a new business owner or a new business offering the services. It's definitely going to be wise to try to get somewhat of a comparable spare mower, so that if you ever fall in a situation like that, your clients, especially as a new business, your clients aren't going to be waiting around for you to get to them. And like you said, it's hard to rent a mower. There's not a lot of places, at least around here, that offers that. And it's the same type of situation when you're checking your belts beforehand. You want to make sure you have a plan B before you continue to grow plan A.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that comes also with small equipment, like weed whips.
Mhm.
Make sure you have backup weed whips. Make sure you have backup blowers, because there's times where a weed whip won't start. What are you going to do if you don't go out with two weed whips? That's one of the things. Or if you got an edger and you got a weed whip, what are you going to do if that edger doesn't work? Well, you're going to have to use the weed whip. There's things that you got to have to make sure that you can go through. Yeah, being single by yourself, you're like, okay, well, all I need is one weed whip. It's just myself. I only need one mower. I only need one blower.
Mm.
No, make sure you got backups.
Yeah.
Because as you're starting to get more and more jobs, you might come to a point where one of those blowers doesn't work, one of the weed whips don't work. Then what are you going to do? You're just not going to weed whip for the week till you can get something,
Mm.
Or get it fixed. No, you got to make sure that you got something there to get the job done. And I think that's one of the things, as you start to grow, as yourself as a solo operator, start adding pieces of equipment to your lineup.
Mm.
And it's always good to have. There's many times I've seen, I'll be on a job. I hate to say it, but like our one weed whip today, it rained a little bit on us. We got stuck in a downpour, and our one weed whip wouldn't start for a good 2 hours. So luckily, we have a newer weed whip, and that started up like no problem, and we got the jobs done. But if I was by myself and I had that only one weed whip and it got wet and it wouldn't start, what am I going to do? I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to get as close as I can to everything and hope that the grass isn't tall around everything, and that's one of the things you don't want to have to deal with. I'll tell you that much. So, and I think that's another thing is like keep spare spark plugs. I think that's one of the best things too. Keeping a spare spark plug, keep a spare, gas filter or oil filters for everything that you can, because, I've seen gas filters clog up really easily to where you're like in the middle of the field and it's not pumping enough gas through it. And what are you going to do? You got to change that gas filter out in the middle of the job. It's not something that you like to do, but I've had to do it before, and, you make do with what you can sometimes. And even, even established companies always have breakdowns. And nowadays, like I'll tell you this, nowadays we've seen so many new companies that have bought brand new mowers that break down literally in the first couple of weeks. And there's things that you don't think about, like checking the oil. You should always be checking that oil every day if you can. We try to check it every day if we can, but sometimes we check it once a week. It's like you make sure to check that oil, because there's many a times that you don't check that oil and you might be leaking oil and you're like, okay, what's going on? Why is this engine not sounding right? You might have blew a gasket. You don't want to do that. So make sure you're checking your oil definitely every day. Check your air pressure. I think that's another thing a lot of people don't do is check their air pressure in their mower tires. And just, oh, they look good. They hop on it and go mow.
That's huge.
Yeah, definitely check that air pressure. I mean, you might be off a little bit, or your deck might be, your deck might be not level and you're cutting at an angle and you're cutting all day and you're like, okay, what's going on? I'll tell you a quick one today that happened to us this year. I had my one guy change blades and we switched out blades. So we switched from mulching blades to high lift blades for this year to try something different. And he actually put one of the blades upside down. So he literally was cutting for a couple jobs, and he's like, something's wrong with this mower. And I said, what's wrong? He's like, well, I'm having to cut and then have to cut back over that one section because it seems like the one blade's not cutting right. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And we were, at a couple big jobs. So I'm like, okay, something ain't right, and I finished up the job. I said, well, just put it offside. We'll figure it out, when we're done and, go from there. And so he had put it by the trailer. I went over there and I just happened to look underneath the deck and I'm like, oh, you put the blade on wrong. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, go look at the other blades and see which one's upside down. And you tell me which foot, and that's, sometimes you could be in a rush and just throw that blade on upside down and you're out in the middle of the field and you're like, okay, why is it not cutting right? Make sure you carry something to pop that blade off and change it out real quick in the field. I mean, we used to do it all the time when we used to run walk behinds, is we used to carry extra blades and be able to change them right there middle of the day and say, okay, well, we could change these blades out real quick and keep going. So, I mean, definitely that's something to keep a hand on. Also, some tools to be able to take off like a blade or something if you had to. So,
if you were to make a list of like some of the things that we overlook that you would have handy with you in your truck for tools, like give me like a list of 5 tools that you would have.
A rubber mallet is a good one. Socket set is one of the things that I think a lot of people don't think about, especially when they're mowing. We keep plug tires tools, pretty much like, plug tires and stuff. That's always something that you don't really think about, but sometimes if you're out there and you run over a nail, or if you run over one of those, the markers for, that they mark out like gas and water line, and you just happen to get it, you might, blow a tire or something, or be able to. Another tool is an air compressor. And to always have a good air compressor that you can plug into the cigarette, or a battery operated air compressor. And then the last tool that is something that a lot of people don't think about, an impact wrench. Keep an impact wrench in your truck, or a drill is always good too, to have a drill in your truck too. So,
yeah, I think I have a very similar list. A couple things that I'm going to steal from you because I didn't think of those things. That I'm going to use that from now on, even just having it at my house. Definitely a socket set for sure. Definitely an impact wrench. Here's one that maybe not a lot of people carry is a grinder, angle grinder, because
that's a good
one, you could use it for sharpening blades on site, and two, let's say you run over like a fence or something, or and you have to like untangle stuff or whatever, you could use that for many, or you break a piece of your mower off that's dangling, you got to cut something off. An angle grinder is definitely good. A battery operated one, definitely.
Yeah.
So that's 3 on my end. I mean, extra safety glasses, I guess, but as far as vehicles, like I definitely get a jack stand. Like I'm sorry, jack stands in a car jack.
Yeah, a good car jack. I mean, they got good scissor jack lifts that are amazing. We bought one, I think beginning of last year, and we put one in one of our trucks to be able to have, because it lifts better than the jack that came with the truck. A lot easier and a lot better. And I think that's one of the things we don't think about when we're out there and our tire blows and you're over there with that little jack they give you, this little bottle jack, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to get this tire up. You got to really think about it sometimes, sometimes it's easier to have a floor jack if you got one, but sometimes if you don't have a good truck, or you don't want nobody to steal it, you're like, why do I need to put a floor jack in there? But it comes in handy sometimes. You don't really think about it, but it does come in handy, especially, with us being in the green industry and you're out driving around. Um, I think one thing that you could think about if you're in the green industry, even if you're in mowing, I'll tell you one thing that comes in handy that we started added into our truck last year is we have one of them hand saws, a battery operated hand saw. It's only 6 inches, but I'll tell you what, how many times we've used that on a non-regular basis to cut up branches that fallen out of a yard, or there's a branch that's hanging down and you want to cut it so you don't get hit. So definitely that's one of the things that you should probably carry in your truck if you're in the green industry, because it's going to help you out at a lot of times. Because I don't know how many times before a customer would say, oh, this branch fell in my yard, can you take it away? And then you're like, I gotta log this big branch into my truck or into my trailer and haul it around for the rest of the day. Get a little handsaw and you'll be golden at that point. So
yeah, one thing I forgot about the spare tires and stuff like that in changing tires is that someone will have a flat, they'll take the tire off, or they go into the trunk or their trailer and get the spare tire, and the spare tire is flat. And so it's like, what good is a spare tire going to do you when you don't have any air in it?
right.
So again, that comes down to like preventative maintenance, making sure that everything that you have is functional before you actually head out there on the road, and you don't want to find out after the fact, which most of us do.
Right. I think there's a lot of things we don't think about when we're, even on a day process. Even, I used to work with a company way long time ago before right when I first started. I kind of worked for a big company, and we used to have a checklist that we had to go through once a week. And I'll tell you what, there was probably 30 items on there that you wouldn't even think about to check. Yeah, it's oil, your antifreeze, all that stuff, but you had to check the air pressure. You had to look at your shocks. Make sure that you had wheel chucks, make sure you had cones with you. It's things that you don't really think about, when you first get into the lawn mowing, of like, do I need wheel chocks? Do I need cones? But these things come in handy. It's safety for you. You never know when you're at a job and you're like, okay, I need to unhook my trailer, but I don't want my trailer to roll down this little incline, so having wheel chocks come in handy to have. So, have a four-way, if like I said, a four-way with you. There's little things that we don't think about to have. Screwdrivers, keep screwdrivers. I literally have in my truck box, besides the socket set and the saw and that, it is filled with all kinds of stuff. I mean, I have stuff that that we do, some fencing, so we have screws, we have nails. I literally have a toolbox that has all kinds of different things in it that you wouldn't think of that you would need. And but once that happens to you, you're like, okay, well, maybe I should have some screws with me. Maybe I should have some nails with me. Maybe I should have a cotter pin with me. Maybe you're nonstop doing fertilization. Have a cotter pin with you. You never know when that cotter pin's going to break, and you're like, oh crap, now I can't finish this job. Have some cotter pins with you. Have some washers with you. There's things that we don't think about. Have bolts with you. Like I said, they're not common things, but once it breaks on you, you're like, okay, I'm going to buy 3 of those things, and I'm going to keep 1 at the shop, keep 2 in my truck, and keep it with me. I mean, like I said, I have toolboxes that have every tool that I can think of, that might happen. You can go out there and fix a part in the middle of the field. And I think that's one of the things that you really don't think about till it happens. I'll tell you what, because one of my mowers, one of our stand-ons, literally at least once a year used to pop the belt off, the drive belt. It doesn't destroy it, it just pops it off. It gets too wet or too dry and it just pops off. So literally we keep, not only you need to have a socket set for it, but you need to have an open end wrench for it and a screwdriver to pop the one piece off. And these things aren't things that you think about. So you start putting them into a box. So literally when that happens, you're like, okay, I can pop this off. I can put this on literally on the job site. Yeah, it might take me a half hour to do this, but once you get repetitive at it and doing it so many times, you're like, okay, boom, boom, boom. Okay, I'm done. 15 minutes later, you're done instead of like a half hour. But instead of having to haul it onto a trailer, drive it to somewhere, have them, spend 2 hours fixing it for you, and then it costs you $500 when it's something that literally you could do and take hour of your time. If customer comes, I've had so many customers come out to me like, what are you doing? Your mower breakdown? Yep. I'm going to fix it right here and I'll finish up your job. Okay. No problem. Need anything? You need a water? You need something to eat or anything while you're down there? No, I'm good. Thanks. That's when you have a good customer. And when they come out and say, hey, you need a water, you need something to eat, that's the customers I love. I love those customers that are willing to give you something, just out of the sheer goodness of their heart, because they know that you're out there working your butt off on a daily basis, and that, that's what you want customers that enjoy your work, but still want to take care of you because they know that you're doing a good job for them.
That's the thing though, too, because what looks better as a business, right? If you have all the stuff and you're prepared, and if something does happen midway through a job at your customer's house, that customer is going to feel a lot better knowing that you're there fixing it and that their lawn is going to get done versus you packing up your stuff, leaving that property halfway done, and then them not knowing when you're going to return.
True.
Yeah.
True. Because I mean, you could be that guy that doesn't have that backup mower, and then you're taking the mower in and you take it into the dealer, and the dealer's like, oh, it's a week before we can get it fixed because we got to get a part. What are you going to do? You mowed half the lawn, or you mowed, 3-4 stripes in the middle of the yard, and you're like, okay. And now the customer's like calling you nonstop. Like, where are you at?
I'd be pissed too,
Yeah.
And that's what leads to like bad reviews,
Right.
They'll take a picture that, can you believe this company left my lawn halfway done, and they left.
Yeah. Or you could just have a neighbor take a picture of that yard and be like, hey, look at this lawn. This company left and just didn't even finish it. They scalped it, because they didn't, but, make sure you have backups. I think that's one of the things we don't ever think about is having those backups. And it's happened to me for years. It's happened to me many a times. I'll tell you, about 15 years ago, I got robbed at one point, and I had backup mowers that needed parts to be fixed. I'll tell you what, when I got all my stuff stolen, literally I had my backups up and running within 3 hours, and we were back out on the road. Like nothing happened. And I think that's the one thing that you don't think about having, as you start to scale, having a backup trailer, having a couple backup mowers, having a couple weed whips as backups. As you continue to grow to where you're like, okay, I'm going to have a second crew. Make sure you have enough equipment just in case that stuff breaks down, that you can be like, okay, I can put you back out in literally a couple more hours and you'll be good to go. Right. A lot of these, look at some of these big companies that have, multiple crews. They constantly have mowers. They have tons of mowers left over. They still have tons of equipment. They're not just enough equipment for that many routes. They have extra mowers that they're always continuously working on. They have mechanics that are nonstop working on mowers, so that way, literally, they keep going in and out. And I think that's what you got to do as you start to expand and continue to expand. Always make sure that you have backups, backup parts, backup mowers, anything that you can think of. Make sure you have it and be prepared. It's one of the things I could think. All I can say is just always be prepared for the unexpected. You can get pissed all you want. I've gotten pissed before. It doesn't do anything but just irritate you. You're like, yeah, what am I going to do? I'm pissed that this part broke, but what am I going to do? I got to fix it. I got to go get this part and get it in, or I got to fix it now and deal with it, So
someone told me a while back, I forgot who it was, but I have always remembered it. And they said, If you have two of one thing, you really only have one of it. And if
Yep.
you have one of one thing, you have nothing.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah.
It's a good point. Yeah. I'll tell you one thing, as shovels, I got probably 100 shovels in my shop. I'll tell you what, I really do. You know, one breaks, I got plenty more to go back, from doing a big job. And, you leave one on a job site. Oh, well, I still got a backup, you know, you don't really think about some of the stuff that, you know, it's one of those things. I feel like as a solo operator, you start thinking more about, like you said, making the profit. You don't really think about, what am I going to do if it breaks down? Or what am I going to do if I left my rake at one of the job sites, and I go back there, it's gone, or somebody come up and stole it when I went in to get Subway. You don't really think about that sometimes. And that's one of the things you really should think about, is you should be always aware of everything and anything, and make sure that you have your pieces of equipment. Sometimes you lose them in a job site and you don't really think about it, and you go away. Or I don't know I don't know how many times I've left something at a job site, like a shovel or a rake, and go back and it's not there. Or I'll go back and it's still sitting there a week later, and I'm like, man, I forgot that I took that. Why did I leave that here? Luckily the customer let me know that it was there, or the customer didn't see that it was still sitting in his bed, like the rake's still sitting in the bed. It's one of those things, you're like, oh crap, that's where it's at. You've been looking for it all week, and you're like, oops, I forgot it here.
I'm laughing because you just made me remember of an incident that I had. A friend of mine. It wasn't me, but I was with him at the time. We were on a cruise. It was me and my girlfriend at the time, and him and his girlfriend. And we were somewhere like St. Thomas, and we all walked into like this gift shop or whatever, and they're selling T-shirts and stuff. So he's looking at the T-shirts, and he puts his phone like on top of these shirts. It's a big table in the middle, and a lot of people are in this store. So unintentionally, he left and forgot that the phone was on top of these T-shirts. So we leave the store and we're like at the beach and we're doing stuff. It must have been about 2 hours past since he noticed that his phone was missing. We're
Wow.
like, oh crap, like his phone. And he's like, I think I left it at that store. So we're literally running back. Because we always have that in the back of mind that if we get there quick enough, we maybe prevent somebody from stealing it.
Right.
And oddly enough, it was still there where he left it, like in the open. Anybody could have grabbed it, but it was just one of those things. But my point is that like your story with the rake, when you find out it's there a week later, it's always nice having that feeling that like,
I didn't lose it.
I
Yeah.
didn't lose
I
it.
didn't, it didn't fall out of my truck. Nobody
Right.
stole it. That's your aha moment. You're like, okay, maybe I need to really look a little bit longer and think, where did I put that before I
Mm,
just assume that somebody stole it,
right.
and or if you're in a rush. A lot of times it's when we're in a rush, we're in a rush to like hurry up and get done and get home, or hurry up and go into another store or something. You're not thinking about like, where did you put this,
Mm,
and I think that's one of the things that sometimes, you know, I like to go around my job sites and look at my jobs. Even if I got other guys out there doing stuff, I like to go sometimes and just look at, what's been done. What kind of tools did they use? Did they grab everything before they left? You get employees sometimes, and employees do the same thing. They're in a rush. They think, oh, Joe got it. Well, Joe didn't get it, and Tom didn't get it. So who
mm,
got it? Really, nobody did. They just left it there. So you gotta sometimes just check it out yourself. Especially as you start to get bigger too, and inform your employees. Double check everything. I know a couple companies, they make a list out of all the tools, and they literally have it in their trailers to where like, okay, this has to be there. Like there's 4 shovels, so make sure you have 4 shovels back up here, 5 rakes. Have here's the drill that you got to make sure that you have in there, the saw. So they make sure that they have a list where their guys make sure that they have everything back in that trailer when they're done for the day, or they move from job to job. So I think it's one of the things, as you start to get bigger, make sure you tell your employees, like, okay, I'm sending you out with this and this, this weed whip and this, edger. Make sure you come back with this weed whip and edger, or make sure you have it all day. Make sure you don't leave it at a job site. Don't leave the bed edger at a job site. Make sure you keep it with you. So, yeah, it's always them little things, I think, that we don't think about, and they can come in handy down the road. And it comes to breakdowns, it comes to equipment. Stuff's not cheap. It's expensive. Believe me, everything's expensive, and when you lose something or you misplace something, you kind of want to know what happened to it. And you're like, you can, I was watching, I watched one of these guys that he runs a mowing company and a snow removal company. And he's up in Quebec, and his guys ran over a couple of pieces of expensive furniture and stuff. And he's like, you know what? He goes, I can't get mad at it. It's a common thing. You're going to do that. But, he's just telling his guys, he goes, I'm not going to, make you guys pay for it. But, next time we're not going to go this far into this property. We're just going to stay right here. We're not going to go farther than this. And he goes, we're going to let the customer know that we're not getting farther into the property, the snow blow, because we don't want to have any more damage. So, I think you always got to assess every job, especially as you get bigger, or if you get employees, assess every job, know exactly, when it comes to snow removal, comes to mowing, like, okay, can we shoot, stuff this way? Can we shoot stuff that way? There might be, a window down there, and there might be, you might be mowing by a rock bed, and you don't want to shoot a rock to that window. So you're going to want to shoot the opposite way. And, as you get people to work for you, you want to make sure, like, hey, make sure you're shooting it this way. Don't go towards it, shoot it the other way. Don't weed whip here. You always should assess every job day to day, and know exactly what goes on in every job. I mean, we have a lot of jobs that we do that have dogs, so they have dog toys, or kids with toys. We're always at those jobs, we're getting out and we're like, okay, we're gonna go walk the yard real quick. 5 minutes walk the yard, look for every toy. And even as you're mowing, you're still looking for toys, because there might be a high patch of grass that you missed that toy when you were walking it, but after you start mowing, oh, there it is. So you don't want to run over that toy. Or how many times I've run over a paper, literally, and then shot the paper all over the place, and you're like, man, now I got a mess to clean up. Like, it starts to dawn in your head, like, I better take a look in while I'm mowing. Yeah, I'm gonna listen to my tunes and try to make sure I got straight lines, but I'm gonna be looking nonstop for paper, looking for toys, anything I can.
Dude,
I think that's one of the things you should do, is look for all that stuff.
A couple seasons ago, I helped out a friend. His father was getting older, moving out of that. They were selling the house, but his property was like overgrown. And that, I haven't done a lot of super overgrown properties, but I was nervous because, number one, I didn't know the property. Number two, I couldn't see anything. So I don't know if I'm like headed straight towards a big rock or a boulder,
Right.
or, if there's any like electrical stuff or anything like that. And that's like one of the most uneasy things, is like, not knowing. But to my point is, if you're unfamiliar with properties and stuff like that, like, one of the parts of making sure that you don't break down or break something is asking the customer, like, is there any areas in the property of concern? And, for the most part, you're going to get that because they'll be vocal about it, but they may not point out the dangers. They may not point out like certain things, so it's like, it might be good to walk the property first, take an eye, closer look with the eye, and then decide to get back on afterwards.
Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of these videos, and I know everybody's out there doing them, where they take those overgrown lawns and they mow them. But definitely walk through them and check them out. Like definitely, like you're saying, dude, walk the property, talk to the people. If it's an abandoned house and you're doing it for free, walk the property. Don't run the mower through it. A damage to your equipment, a damage to something else that you don't see out there. I mean, it could be worse than what you think.
Mm.
You might run into a stump while you're mowing it, and it's going to send you off that mower. It's happened. So definitely, take your time and be aware of your situations. Another one I think a lot of people don't realize is when they mow commercial properties. Check out them commercial properties. You might be flying through parking lots, mowing, common areas and stuff, but keep an eye out there for people. Some people are not going to stop for you. They're driving through that parking lot to get to another spot or to a park, to another, place or whatever. Be aware of it. Take your time. Don't be rushing through a thing trying to get to the next spot to cut. Because I'll tell you, in the past, I've had guys get hit by, somebody run into the mower while the guy's on it and get flung off of it. And because they weren't paying attention. Neither of them were paying attention. So you got to be paying attention, when you do these commercial properties and which way you're shooting it too. I mean, there's tons of cars, and cars are more expensive than a mower. I'll tell you that much. So,
yeah. I mean, one more thing too, I forgot to mention is, like we talked about having two of everything.
Yeah.
How about this? How about a spare set of keys to your truck? You lose your keys or you lock your keys in there. I mean, that happens.
I'll tell you what we've learned, and I hate to say this, but me and my guys, literally, whoever's driving has to roll the window down a little bit, enough to where you can stick your hand in there, because if you leave your keys in there and it gets locked, you got to get away in there. And I'm not busting a window out to get into a vehicle. So we always leave our windows down. It could be the middle. We could be plowing and the snow's flying. We're going to leave it to where we can stick our arm in there and unlock that window, because I'll tell you what, I'm not going to have a busted window during the winter. So, definitely keep a spare set of keys, like you're saying, or roll your window down a little bit. Make sure you can get in and out. So I think it comes into a lot more handier that way than busting a window and spending $400 or $500 on a window to replace. So yeah.
Is Brightstone in the chat today or what?
No, he's not in there today. So and no good. No, I don't even think he sent me a joke this week.
I got one for him.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So a man walks into the grocery store and he gets to the checkout lane and he puts on the conveyor belt a banana, watermelon, corn, a box of cereal, a gallon of milk, strawberries, watermelon. And the lady at the checkout counter, the clerk, she goes, "Huh, you must be single." And he says, "Why do you say that?" He goes, "Because you're fucking ugly."
Oh shit! Oh man! Oh,
my buddy told me that one today.
That is funny. That is funny. I got something for you. Here we go. It's okay. So if you're a security guard of a Samsung store, are you really the guardian of the galaxy?
I mean, technically, yeah.
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 Yeah. So you're a superhero at that point.
Yeah, they have their phone. Their flagship phone is a Galaxy, isn't it?
That's right.
Guarded. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. See,
that's definitely a Brightstone joke.
Yeah, it would be a Brightstone joke, pretty much.
That's definitely.
I mean, I can see him coming up with that.
Yeah.
So
he has the badum types.
Yeah. That's what we need. We need to get the music into it.
You got to get a sound effect machine.
Yep. That's what I'm gonna have to do now. Sorry, guys, we're gonna have the sound effect machine now. Yeah. So, anything else we want to add for till we end the show here?
No, man. I mean, today it's crazy. The season's definitely here. It's it'll soon end quick, but we reached, I think, 96 degrees here today, and then we just had a huge thunderstorm. So I was able to get my lawn done yesterday in time. So I didn't have to worry about it here today. But yeah, it's hot out there, guys. Hydrate. Make sure that you stay hydrated and take your breaks, and stay in the shade when you can, and make sure you're eating your lunch and staying healthy and safe.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's another thing you should keep in your truck, a cooler.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cooler. I mean, you got a couple guys, keep a cooler in there, throw some waters in there, throw some Gatorades in there, keep some stuff to make sure you're hydrated. Make sure you throw ice in there.
Mm.
I think that's one of the best things you can. One thing we did do this year, because I'm tired of spending money on ice, is I bought this stuff called Easy Ice, or Easy Freeze, I think it is. It's like a square ice cube, and you freeze it every day. And then you put it in there. It keeps the cooler good for a couple days usually. So I'll tell you what, it's one of the things that, for what I spent on it, I spent like $35 for 5 pounds of it, and it fills up a good bottom of a cooler. So we got a good size cooler. We put about 20 waters in it. So I mean, literally, it fills the whole bottom up, keeps everything cold for a couple days. And I'll tell you what, that's one of the things compared to buying bags of ice $3 a day. I'll tell you what, I've already saved my money already on it. So it's definitely something that you guys should definitely check into if you don't want to buy ice all the time. Comes in handy, I'll tell you that much. Or buy an ice machine. I know a lot of companies that buy ice machines so they can make their own ice every day and be able to be like, okay, I can fill up my cooler every day or fill up my water jugs every day. So that's another thing to look into too as you start to get bigger. So
What do you think of like those bucket hats, like the boonie hats or whatever you call those things for the shade?
I've seen those. I've seen the ones with the with the little fans in them too, and I don't know. I
Yeah.
think it's good for sun protection if you wanted to keep the sun out of your eyes and off your face and stuff. But I'm not that type of guy. I think, even sometimes when it gets really hot and you get sweaty, like my ears will, my earphones will get all sweaty. So I'm like pulling them off for a minute, and so even with me wearing a hat, if I wear a hat, I'm like, man, this is hot.
Mm.
And so I think they're good for if you're, trying to block the sun and stuff. But I feel like it's gonna make you more warm than you can because your heat can't escape out your head.
Yeah.
It's stuck in that hat. So I don't know.
So some of those have the masks, so like the June bugs or the
Right.
they don't bother you and stuff like that. So
It would be good if you've got an area where there's a lot of bugs and you don't want to get, attacked or we used to do a couple properties that were right in the woods, and I'll tell you what, that used to suck because you'd have to like spray yourself with, tick spray and mosquito spray before you even did the job, and you're like, crap, otherwise you're getting stung nonstop. So, it. I think there's benefits to them. There's some good benefits to a lot of things, especially when it comes to fall cleanups too. I mean, you get those neck gaiters. Them neck gaiters come in handy when it comes to doing cleanups. You can put them on. Even I've seen guys keep them around their necks just to wipe their head off in the middle of the day and stuff, and keep cool. Get them wet and then put them around your neck, and they'll cool you off, especially when it's hot, 100 degrees and stuff. So
yeah,
that's a good
Pablo
thing.
does that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He has a big hat there and the scarf. And I don't know if you noticed, but he's always wearing long sleeve shirts.
Yeah.
And he's in Florida.
Yeah. Protect yourself from skin cancer, guys. Wear your sunscreen, or wear some of the moisture wicking long sleeves. It's one of the best things you can do, because skin cancer is no joke. Definitely not a joke.
Well, that steak was good, Scott. So just wanted to let everybody know that I was enjoying it on the podcast.
That's good. Enjoy it. It was good. Well, guys, we had a good podcast today. It's been an awesome show. We want to thank our sponsors, Cujo, Pro Parts Direct, and DGP, which DGP just stopped up at my shop yesterday, dropped off some more samples. and we had some good chats and a lot of more things coming in, guys, from DGP. So be on the lookout for it. We'll be promoting it here in a couple of months. So I can't wait. And then hopefully see everybody at Equip in a couple months. Did you hear about Haley, the lawn queen? She mowed one of a whole football field for what is that? It used to be Renko Mowers, which I think it used to be, what is that? Kohler? Yeah. Used to be Kohler. She mowed it for the Guinness World Record and did it, I think, in 14 minutes, a whole football field. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's amazing.
What size mower?
I think it was 60-inch.
Jeez.
44 horsepower mower. Yeah.
She was moving.
She was moving fast.
Hmm.
So, I mean, just imagine how much grass you can cut now, knowing that. You get some big yards, you can mow some big properties now.
I'm gonna try to beat that record.
Beat the Guinness World Record. That's what you got to do, guys. Beat it. Thank you guys for all watching and listening. We will see you again next week. And